It's that fear, that sense of uncomfortability, that sense of self-inflicted insecurity, right? Everything that you think your audience think they can't do is because they think they can't do, right? They're going to have people tell them they shouldn't and they can't and give them advice left and right. At the end of the day, though, like, what's stopping any of your audience in Asia, in Malaysia, in KL, wherever, right? Having clients in the US, what's stopping them?
Hey guys, welcome to the Bob Lowe Show, where I speak to the best marketing minds around the world. Today we have Derek Chu, a homeboy here from Malaysia, but now is in LA. He has over 20 years experience in digital marketing, and he has worked in Yahoo in their SEO division. And he has also worked on the acquisition and digital marketing teams of brands such as Legalzoom and Fandango. And back in August 2017, he decided to step up by himself and started his own results-focused digital marketing agency called Fullmoon Digital. He also has an MBA in marketing from the University of Phoenix. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. It's been a long time. Finally, definitely happy to finally talk to you.
Yeah, it's so great to talk to a fellow Malaysian, but it's interesting that you are in LA and doing like the same things I'm doing, but in Los Angeles, and your experience is very, very extensive.
No, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me.
So you started your career in an Asian agency in Michigan called Organic, and back 18 years ago, you were doing SEO in the early years, and then after that, you had a great opportunity to transition to, back then, one of the biggest companies in the world, which is Yahoo. Tell us a bit of your experience of that.
Yeah, so it was interesting because when I was working at Organic, I was actually in Michigan, right, in the Midwest, and so I was doing analytics for the brand, the Jeep and Chrysler brand within Organic, and it was one of those times when SEO was just an up and coming industry. So I started training our internal team on SEO for the Jeep brand, for the Chrysler brand. And then, out of the blue one day, right, I had recruiters from, this little company called Yahoo call me up and say, hey, are you interested in talking to us about a position here at Yahoo in Santa Monica, California, right? And so, I thought, first of all, I really thought it was a prank. Right? I thought, one of my buddies was just trying to like prank me on the phone call, get me all excited. And the other thing also is, back in the day, Yahoo was the search engine, right? And Google was still a really small company with a, if you remember the Google homepage back then, it was like a really ugly Google logo and a gray background and all that stuff. So, Yahoo was the giant. And it's always been, a dream as someone who practices SEO back in the day to be like, hey, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool to work in a search engine, right? So when I got the call, I was like, like a candy store. I was like, oh my gosh, Yahoo called me. I'm so excited, yada, yada. Yeah. And so I started talking with the recruiter, and I realized that, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, this is Yahoo, So I think it was probably, we went back and forth for about 3 months on a phone call just to make sure that, this is really what I want to do. And of course, I was playing hard to get, right? Because I'm like, behind, after I hung up on the phone, I'm like, yeah, I really want this, but it's a long move from Michigan all the way, basically from coast to coast. So when I finally decided to go to Yahoo, it was a very strange transition, right? Because I went from the agency side where I was trying to figure out, how do we maximize search visibility and user experience for our clients on one side, to now having the opportunity to be inside the belly of the beast, right? So in my mind, I'm like, okay, now I get to go in there and kind of figure out how this whole algorithm works. By nature, I'm a data geek, and I'm a really kind of like technical person. So that got me excited. So yeah, after 3 months, I said, all right, we're moving to California. So basically, took the job at Yahoo and became one of their internal SEO. We had 2 SEOs there. It was me and the person, and the scariest moment was the first day walking in there, right? Because you have this realization that, oh my gosh, now I'm going to be managing the SEO for Yahoo Finance, Yahoo News, Yahoo Personals, right? Hotjobs.com when they owned them. And then you realize, oh my gosh, it's 500 million visitors a month, and I have to manage that traffic. So I think it was one of the moments where it was scary, exciting, and it's like, what the hell did I just do, right? Because there were so many other SEOs, just in California alone that could probably do 10 times better than I can at Yahoo, right? But here's an opportunity for me to actually learn, right? And work with, what I, at that time, probably one of the best group of engineers. So, that transition itself was a super humbling experience, right? Some unknown person from Malaysia, right, who happened to come to the US to get an education in like Bloomington, Indiana, right, who then started his first job as a developer in Ann Arbor, Michigan, all the way, within less than five years or 6 years, suddenly, running SEO at Yahoo.
Okay, thanks, Derek, for sharing your experience with Yahoo. So you started in the early days of SEO. Could you tell us how SEO has changed, like 16 years from when you were at Yahoo?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, fundamental changes, but there's also a lot of extreme changes, right? That has happened over, even to the last 3-5 years, not even going back so far. It's funny that you bring up that question because yesterday we were actually meeting with a client, a major aftermarket auto parts supplier in the US, right? And so we were talking about their overall SEO's digital strategy, but the top SEO came up. And we were talking with the clients on, making SEO changes and updating their strategy. And then the one thing that they said that I thought was kind of ironic was, and it shows you the mentality of people still today and businesses still today and what they think of SEO, right? They say, well, if we make these changes today, we won't see the results for another 6 to 9 months. Right? And so I'm like, yeah, you're right. But that's Google like 5 years, 10 years ago, where, the way they update their algorithm and the way they update the site information in their own, algorithm took a while, right? Because of the speed of how they process information. Now, fast forward 3-5 years, even 10 years now, the speed at Google processing information is faster than light speed, right? So you can implement SEO changes, like, just a simple example, right? If your audience has a blog about their startup business and whatnot, right? And if they're using WordPress or one of the CMS systems out there, you make a change on your title tag or on your meta description today. That is the most basic thing you can update. You'll probably see your changes updated within 48, 72 hours. It will be reflected in the Google's results page, right? That's how fast it is today when you are updating information and metadata in Google today, right? And so it was interesting that the client still had the mentality of what SEO was from like even 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Now I could be sneaky and say, yeah, Mr. Client, it'll take you 9 months, so you got to work with me for 9 months to get your result, right? Yeah. But it's a mentality, and there's still such a huge population of businesses that they are stuck in what Google was or what search engine was versus what it is today.
Cool. So in terms of SEO, a lot of things have changed. And later on in your career, you also sort of disrupted the legal industry when you worked for Legalzoom. Tell us more about your experience when you were, working for digital marketing, but in a legal industry.
Yeah, so the way I got into Legalzoom was actually interesting. They had recruited me probably 6 months ago before, and I said no because I wanted to kind of try my own thing, and then my own thing didn't work out 3 months later, and then I called them back, right? And it so happens that I was lucky because they still haven't found someone yet, right? So 6 months later, I went back to Legalzoom. I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry I messed up. Is the job still available? And I was fortunate that it was. So, I started there, and, Legalzoom was interesting because, up to then in my career, I never worked with the founders and CEO right? It was like every single thing we do, I was working hand in hand with the co-founders, right? And they were really hands-on. And I think that was one of my first experiences where I'm like, oh, wow, this is what it feels like working with a co-founder, working for a co-founder, working side by side with a co-founder, right? It was stressful. They were a growing business. They were, interrupting the legal industry, and they wanted to basically, at that point, they were basically going head to head with all the attorneys out there in that space, grabbing businesses. So the plus side, now here's the thing for people, for your audience out there who are, who have not made that leap, right, from the corporate world into their own hustle, right, who are still working with a company and in a company, if they have a chance to work with a co-founder, and if they have a chance to work on a team where you are, so in the weeds, use that opportunity to learn as much as you can from the co-founder, regardless if the co-founder is a jerk or not, regardless if the co-founder is difficult to work with or not, regardless if the co-founder is the nicest person that you have worked with, right? There's so much to learn because, fact is, the co-founder would not be where they are if they could not start a business. So put your ego aside, right, and put your own personal preferences and mindset aside when you're working with a co-founder, and be in the mindset of, I am learning the most I can because at some point, at some day, I might be that person.
That's a great tip. I think that's great advice for most of my viewers who are young people who are starting out their career. And you said something about you started a culture of A/B testing in Legalzoom. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so that was one of the first times when I'd say that I really got into A/B testing. Right now, in our careers, regardless of where we've started, right, there's this kind of notion of hey, you guys always gonna be testing, the ABT, always be testing, right? But I have never felt so involved in testing, and I've never realized the discipline and the amount of due diligence that it takes to do testing until I worked at Legalzoom. And the reason is this, right? In the past, I did testing. I did a lot of affiliate marketing myself. So for me, A/B testing is, okay, I have a landing page. I'm going to change the button from blue to red, and then I'll wait and see what happens. Yeah, that's great, right? Change the text from, sign up today to learn more today and see what happens, right? But Legalzoom, right? Let me just kind of give you the end result, and then I'll tell you what happened. By the time I left, from the day one I started at Legalzoom to a year and a half, a little bit after I left, in that short period, we tested over 40 versions of just the homepage. All right, let's not even talk about the landing pages and all that. Right, we tested 40 versions of the landing page of the homepage, and every single version, it was literally myself, the co-founder, and a couple more people on our team, and it was like every week we would basically sit, go into a room, print everything out, post it on the walls, and we made it more interesting, right? So we made it more interesting. We're like, all right, you know what? We'll put $5 bets on whose version is going to win. Right? And so, we went from a company that was, started by entrepreneurs, right? To start adapting into a culture of, okay, you know what? We have our opinions, right? Everyone has their opinions, but let's make sure that our opinions are validated and tested, and be ready to admit that you're wrong. Now, I also never worked with the CEO who has admitted he was wrong so many times. So, he would put a version out there. He's like, hey, you know what? I feel that this is going to win. I'm like, okay, test it, right? But that level of engagement from a founder, or and that level of I'd say humility from a founder, right? That can admit that, hey, I feel that this version is good, but I don't mind being wrong. And so, that culture, I think it really starts at the top, right? Because, and it's a very few times when I say culture starts at the top, because when it comes to testing, it has to be bought in from top down.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you experience like difference of results? Like you said, you A/B tested different home pages. Like, did you experience like a drastic amount of results with different types of home pages?
Yes, but it was very gradual, right? It was incremental. It was very incremental. One of the myths that that I see a lot on my feed, right, in Facebook or LinkedIn or any kind of social network, is like, hey, we can improve your conversion rate from by 60% overnight, right, by making one change. Well, maybe, right? But I've been in the trenches where we went from a X% conversion rate, right, to a X plus Y conversion rate over 9 months. All right. And because why? Not every test you do on the same page will always be positive. Right? You're going to have spikes and dips. So, when sometimes it really I find it funny, and sometimes it drives me up crazy. It's like when I see the so-called gurus out there, right, saying, hey, we'll increase it by 80% overnight, or in 3 months, or in a month. Hey, but it's all relative, right? If you are a startup and you have 100 visitors today with 2 conversions a month, if I bring your site to 8 conversions, that's 400%. So, I think a lot of people, when they talk about A/B testing, at different levels, right? If you're in a company, you're talking about a whole different landscape of A/B testing and a whole different set of requirements of A/B testing. If you are a startup, then you're talking about different KPIs that you measure, different speed at which you test. So, I think, your audience, just for your audience kind of, benefit, when people talk about A/B testing, we always have to put it in the context of the environment. And based on that, like for example, if I was running a A/B testing for, let's say, Ford company, right, for selling cars and dealerships, 0.5% improvement from A/B testing, amazing, right, because of the volume. But a 0.5% improvement, if I put it on my Facebook ad and say I can improve your conversion by 0.5%, that's going to get people laughing at me.
Great stuff. I think it's sometimes for certain marketers, it's a forgotten art of A/B testing, and not every client puts an emphasis on it, in my experience. But it's a good practice to have when you're running ads or you're doing a new creative or new website. But sometimes also you don't have the luxury to do that, because you have to get results straight away.
Yeah,
that's my experience as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So one more interesting thing that I saw in your portfolio is that you were on the revenue and acquisition director at Fandango. Tell us more about working at this exciting, at that time, one of the exciting companies in the US.
Yeah. So the way I actually got into Fandango was through an acquisition of my previous company, right?
Oh,
So I was actually running the acquisition and retention at a company called MGO. And so Fandango acquired MGO. And now, if you actually go to fandangonow.com,
yeah.
that's the company that I was actually running acquisition and retention. They acquired it and they rebranded it
Oh,
into Fandango now. So it's an on-demand movie, right? OTT, over the top box kind of on-demand movie service.
yeah.
That was
Before Netflix.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was interesting because when I did digital marketing, it's always web-based, mobile, tablet, right? Um, at doing on-demand video services, I was exposed to marketing, to television, to Roku boxes, to different types of in-home devices. So I went from basically saying, oh yeah, I can figure out paid search. I can help you with paid search acquisition. I can lower your customer acquisition cost. I can figure out SEO for you and all this, standard digital channels, right? To go into an environment where I was required to say, okay, how do you market to people on their Samsung TV, on their Toshiba TV, on their Roku devices, right? So that was an interesting addition, right, an experience that I was able to acquire and work with in MGO Fandango environment. All right, so marketing to people with on Roku devices is different than marketing to someone on even on mobile, right? The experience is different. The amount of real estate that you have is different on TVs. The lack of real time response, right? It's different. Like for example, if we ran an ad on your Roku interface, right? If I make a mistake on the ad, I cannot log in into, let's say, a AdWords-like environment and make the change right away, right? I have to submit that request into the advertising team on the Roku side, on device side, wait for them to verify it, push it out to their devices and into their hardware, and wait for that update to happen. Right? So even though you have that amount of exposure on devices, the response time and the reaction time it is still way slower than what you have, in terms of control when you're doing on your desktop or when you're doing with paid search also, right? So it was an experience where I really enjoyed having, but I would never go back and work in that space. As it's it's I feel, right, and kind of from my experience, that was a slower paced business than, let's say, running ads for social ads for your clients, right?
Yeah.
Like it's dynamic, it's fast, it's ongoing. It's like, oh my gosh, it's adrenaline pumping, right? You see data right away, kind of stuff. But I think that the TV space, that will come a long way, right? As companies start to integrate their advertising into devices like TVs and kind of in-home devices. Obviously, with the Google boxes and the Amazon Alexa boxes coming over, I think that will actually help improve that experience and the speed in which data is transferred. So definitely, maybe a topic for some other day, but that in-home digital experience, right? I think it's growing, and it's definitely something to watch.
Yeah. I think what you said just now, it's pretty cool that the evolution of marketing is happening. But over all the years working for so many different brands, I know as a marketer, normally I don't ask this because I know that you said results are gradual. But any sort of results or performance-based acquisition that you achieve that is more that stands out, or you're proud of, or it's distinguished, like any sort of result that you achieve that till today you say, oh yeah, I got that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a handful, right, here and there, and just because at the scale of the businesses that I was in, there was a company back in the day called Price Grabber. All right, so back in the day, the comparison shopping engines were a big deal. You had the BizRate, you had Shopzilla, things like that. So I actually was running SEO at this company called PriceGrabber.com. And they were pretty much an aggregator of deals, right? And so one of the projects that I did there over the course of I think 6 months, right, was to improve their SEO performance. And so I think there's 8 million SKUs, so 8 million URLs, right, to work with. And what we did there was interesting. We actually had to work with the database team, work with the engineering team to restructure the back end of the database, right? So that we're able to improve the front end SEO. All right, so SEO really involves back end and front end, right? So we had to work with the schema of the database structure so that it's able to ingest and then reproduce desirable, whether it's URL, whether it's content, whether it's sitemaps, whatever it is. And that was a defining moment because a single mistake could literally bring the business down. 80% of the business was driven by SEO, right? So, when we were looking at improving that traffic, I think our kind of conversion rate, or, when you say conversion rate, meaning, traffic that coming in to clicking out to a deal, was probably under 10%, right? Our SEO traffic was okay, but there were a few categories that we were not strong enough in. And so the goal was to literally just improve it by 10%, right? So we are under 10%, get it above 10%. After 6 months of really careful, process rollouts, right? We were actually got it above 23%, right? So almost double of traffic that we're bringing in versus conversion rates. And that's one of the things that I look back and I'm like, okay, well, that was relatively, it's a lot of work, but it was relatively easy to conceptualize back then, right? But again, SEO is not what it is today. So, if I did, whatever I did back then, today would be just the basics.
Yeah, amazing. Like a lot of people don't understand, but when you said you double the conversions, it actually means a lot to a marketer because we look at that's the metrics we look at. But if you talk to a normal person who doesn't know what they're talking about, that makes a lot of difference to the business, and that's what we write in our resumes. That's what we talk about most of the time. Yep.
And it's funny because you said that. It's really funny you said that because when you talk to a business, right? And I think part of it is because the industry is so tainted by all these unicorns, right? Where they start a business month one, and then by next year they sold for $400 million because they have such an exponential, right? And it's like, well, not every company can do that. Not every company can say that their SEO went from day one and increased by 1,000% in the next 18 months, right? And then their revenue started piling in and acquisition, everything just. How many companies do you know that can actually tell you that story, right? A lot of improvements for a lot of companies, it's gradual and over time. And as an agency owner now, right? That is the story that I have to paint for my clients and prospects, right? They come to us, and I'm sure your audience, when you speak to clients, they're like, hey, can you grow a business in 3 months and 6 months? Oh no, right? Because one, especially new brands that you work with, like, well, no one knows who you are, and your product is entering into a competitive market, and your website is not converting at the rate it should be. So there's so many elements, right? When you talk about growth, that I feel that one, on the client side, there's a huge misconception of how growth is achieved. And on the service side, which is you and I, right, and other entrepreneurs out there in your audience, we sometimes also, I don't want to say we're afraid to kind of tell them they can't, but a lot of times we do. We are afraid that we lose that deal, right? So we say, yeah, we can do this for you. But one important lesson that I've learned, right, is the realization to be fair to yourself as the agency, right? Because you look at a site, you look at a new client, they come to you and say, hey, Bob, can you help us achieve results in 6 months? Because we promise our investors, right? That's number one mistake right there. We promise our investors. In your heart of hearts that it is almost impossible to achieve that crazy results based on their expectations. But sometimes we fall into the trap. I fell into the trap multiple times where I just say yes, right? And then what happens is 3 months later, right, after getting paid 3 months later, I have nothing to show for it. So, those are some things that I kind of learned through my years of working, with an agency and then also now on my own, is that sometimes we have to be really honest with ourselves, right, before we can help a brand or help a client achieve their results.
Yes, I think I learned something there because I also fell trapped to that. Because as a marketer, sometimes you're overconfident. Like sometimes you meet a client, my experience, I meet a client that's very traditional. So I think by running some advertising for them, which they've never done before, I'm able to do this, and you will overpromise and it doesn't go well in the end.
Yep.
And being so many years in digital marketing, what's your experience when it comes to the shift? So 10 years ago, you might be only working on Google AdWords, SEO, but now you have different dynamics, more content-driven, Facebook ads. Maybe you have things like podcasts or LinkedIn. So what do you think is the main shift, and how has it changed the way that you do your marketing?
No, that's a great question. I think that's a very challenging question for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because, content has always existed, even way back then. The importance of content as humans, right? We are a sponge for content since the day we're born, right? So, I think it's one of those, the evolution of that is basically just more outlets to distribute your content, right? You talk about video. I mean, video, nothing new, right? You talk about ads, that's nothing new. All these ways of promoting a business or a kind of a brand, the channels are not new, right? In our world today, we have a lot of millennials growing up, coming out of college, and they're seeing all these, suddenly open their world to, oh my gosh, Instagram ads, Pinterest ads, LinkedIn, like all this stuff, and they think it's like an evolution of like some miracle. But having seen it from a long time ago, right? It's not new, and we as marketers try to package it up so nicely with like ribbons and bow ties, and then go to our clients and say, this is a miracle, right? This is what heaven has sent you. This is God-given gift to your business, so you can go out there and market it, right? What I see in the true evolution of what I'm seeing in content distribution, as well as it's the usage of it. It's the ability to target your audience, right? Back in the day, we couldn't do that, right? Back in the day, if we wanted to advertise for a brand, all right, it was very localized at best. The feedback would take weeks, right? You were not able to get instantaneous feedback on your ad if you ran an ad, let's say in a newspaper or even on TV, right? On TV, it's the worst because you'll never know what the results are. But back in the day, right? But today, right? If you put an ad on Facebook, right, for Bob Lowe Consulting, let's say, right? If the audience doesn't like your ads, and if your ad doesn't resonate with your people that you're showing your ads to, you're gonna know it within hours, right? Evolution is the speed of feedback.
Yeah.
That we, we talk about data and kind of like omni-channel and like multi-touch point attribution, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what I really am amazed with and constantly so excited about is the speed of feedback to your ads, to your right audience, right? And that testing, that ability to react to it and to improve on it happens in real time.
That's right. Yeah, right now we have like the relevance score, and then you can see the results straight away. Like you can get a conversion a few minutes after launching the ad. So it's
exactly
like real-time A/B testing, real-time looking at results.
Yep, and then that's what I'm most excited about, right? Articles. We've been writing articles for many years. Articles is nothing new. And there are many people who are great at writing articles, producing videos way before our time. Right. So, what we're just able to do it with better technology, right? A better perception of how we target our audience. I think that is a key factor as well, right? When you have, your in your audience, your entrepreneurs, and even myself, every single day, we have to be mindful that, yes, we want to get much traffic as we can and as much engagement as we can, right? But the reality is focusing on relevance, right? So I've always told my team as well as my clients, like I write a post on LinkedIn, I rather get only 30 people looking at it and 25 people engaging with it than 3,000 people looking at it and I get zero engagement.
Yes, that's very true. One of the things that I think changed over the years, because I specialize actually in Asia in terms of Facebook advertising. Reason is the price for Facebook advertising is just amazing. In Malaysia and Indonesia, it's very crazy. It's very crazy. But what I find one of my challenges is working with other marketers is a lot of performance marketers come from a Google AdWords background. So they're very into the CTA, conversion, and into all the A/B testing and stuff. But they have a challenge when it comes to content. So because when it comes to Facebook advertising, it's an equal balance, content and also the performance. And my strength is, I can say more on the content side and with some understanding on the performance side. So what's your experience when it comes to like performance targeting and content?
Yeah. So one of the things that we always try to explain to our clients is that your advertising does not work in a vacuum. It does not work in a silo, right? You cannot say, I'm just going to run Facebook ads and ignore everything else. All right. Or you cannot say, I'm going to run Google ads and ignore everything else. And people do that understandably because for multiple reasons. It could be budget, it could be, the brand requirements and whatnot. However, I don't care what your business is, your audience does not engage online in a vacuum either. Right? Your audience might spend more time on Facebook. However, they also use Google. Right? They also use Pinterest. They also use LinkedIn. So, the thing that we want to I always try to communicate with people that I work with, as well as new clients and whatnot, is, it's great that you think, right? You think that a certain channel is good for you. Facebook, for example, right? That's good for you. But we need to make sure that we are testing enough to know where your audience interact, right? What's that cross point of where the sweet spot is? I'll give an example. One of the fashion brands that we work with here in LA, we were on a call with the VP of marketing, right? And she said, Facebook is where our audience is at. Okay, great. Facebook is where every business thinks their audience is at today, right? There's no different. Whether you're selling, a fidget spinner or you're selling $1,000 shoes, Facebook is where your audience is at. And their concept was this. They said, we believe that our audience is on Facebook right? And they should convert immediately from our Facebook ads. Now, when you enter into a conversation like this, immediately you realize what they're saying, right? They're saying that Facebook is where we're going to do acquisition, right? That's great. That's great. And it happens. However, to kind of, our experiences working in Facebook is there's part developing that brand, developing that message, developing that content, right? And nurturing that audience that you are targeting before you even sell it to them. And so a lot of situations we find ourselves trapped into is, like you said, right? They want that immediate sale, right? Now, unless you are a brand that is changing the world and that your product is so unique, you're not going to get that immediate sale.
Yeah.
All right. And especially when your jeans is $300. So, it's helping and communicating and educating, but also a lot of knowledge sharing, right, with the brands and kind of explaining to them that, look, the one thing that I realize is that, look, when you're running a brand, you have a different mindset than when you're a shopper. Right? When you're running a brand, you say, I want customers as fast as I can, right?
Yeah.
But when you are the consumer shopping other brands that you like, you don't see that. Because what do we talk about when we look at brands that we like? Oh my gosh, they had the greatest viral video. Oh my gosh, they had the best content. Oh my gosh, their ads spoke to me, right? But when we are the brand, we're like, no, I want to sell today. It's a huge disconnect.
Yeah. One of the ways I'll also make a LinkedIn video on this. One of the ways I explain to my clients when it comes to this is Facebook ads are at a different stage of the funnel, the sales funnel. So Facebook ads, you're reaching a audience that most of the time don't know who you are. So it's part of building the awareness down towards the conversion. Whereas if you talk about Google AdWords or something that's lower down the funnel where people are already searching, they already have an awareness for that. So that's it's a very different building. So Facebook, you almost rebuild the entire sales funnel towards the conversion, which a lot of brands sometimes don't understand.
All right, yeah. So when we come and talk about Facebook, ads and how it flows, right? I'll give an example. We're talking to one of our clients right now. They're launching a jewelry brand, right? Now, selling jewelry online is so saturated. There's so many companies out there trying to do that, and this is a small business trying to get into that market. So when they came to us, they were talking about spending $10,000-$20,000 a month on Google ads, and they had no sales, right? So our first reaction was like, okay, well, do people know who you are? Do people, even like your product? That's so fundamental. And I think a lot of businesses get caught up in the need to drive sales right away. So in their plan, right, and we help a lot of our customers build out financial forecasting and ad budgeting and all that stuff, modeling, that a lot of times they start their revenue on day one, right? They're saying, hey, we're going to spend $5,000 here. We want 10,000 back, or we want 15,000 back, or we want 4x, 5x. What they never built in, and this is a problem across the board, right? What they never build in is, hey, it's going to take us 3 months to develop content consistently. It's going to take us another 3 months to distribute it so that people start to know who we are, like you said, that awareness. And then, in the back half is when we sell. When a brand sells, the last thing you want to know is that they're actually selling, right? Because if they have established a brand properly, if they've told their story properly, and if they have introduced their value proposition correctly, and they have kind of aligned it with the audience, selling is the easy part.
Yeah, and you said something as well about choosing your clients. So do you manage the expectations that there needs to be a bit of brand building before they go towards conversion? How do you do it?
Yeah, so I used to suck at that. I used to be horrible at that when I first started out, and I think a lot of people might be going through the same thing if when they kind of try to make their side hustle into the main hustle, right? Like one of the things that I learned that was very difficult in the beginning was that exact thing, right? Is painting that story for the client. And why? Because we're all trained, right, by this industry that it has to be ROI focused. It has to be performance focused, right? So what do we do when we start our own business? That mindset that we were trained on, that we were that we hear every single person talk about, that every dollar has to have a return. Every dollar has to have a positive return, right? But what does a positive return really mean, all right? How much value can you put into brand equity? So if I spend $10 in marketing, or I spend $100 in marketing and I get 0 sales, right? Does that mean I have no positive return? Like if you push out content for 6 months and you have no clients from that content, is that a negative return? All right. So the concept of positive return is so ingrained in financials that we forget that there's a lot of value and there's a lot of equity, right, in the brand that you're investing in the message that you're creating and pushing out there every single day. It's going to come back to you in a year, in 18 months, whatever that timeline is. There's no timeline, right? So when we talk to our clients today in terms of how we position them, we always bake in the fact that, look, is your brand out there? Do people know about you? Do people care about your product? How do you know people care about your product? Show us data telling us people care about your product. And 8 out of 10 times, the answer is we don't know. So, okay, you don't know, then let's create an actual strategy so that people can know about your brand. And that's when we talk about the Facebook funnel, right? We basically target the best audience. We study the target audience, build the personas, build the message, build the ad. Don't even talk about selling, right? Just talk about how your product or how your service is addressing the pain points or the questions that your potential audience has, right? So you're giving value and give and give and give. The selling, like I said, the selling doesn't have to be the most difficult part, right? Yeah. So that's really we talk about I have a coach, right? Kurt Mercadante, right? Like he never sold me at all, right? He was just giving value to where I saw it and I realized that value, but more of that. So when it came time to sign up, I'm like, yeah, here, sign up. I want to see what else I can get from that, right? Because I saw the value, I saw the message, I saw the content. And so that's really how we choose our clients today is, do you understand where you are today? Or do you have a strange imaginary world you live in, right? That you feel that people know your brand automatically.
Yeah. It's a great point you made. It's sort of the importance of brand building in digital marketing, which is lacking nowadays. A lot of people talk about conversion straight away, especially startups, and I have a lot of experience when it comes to that. So as we move on, one of the things that I really caught my eye in terms of your content is you talk about entrepreneurship a lot. You talk about making the leap, overcoming your fears. It really resonates with me because 2 months ago I left the corporate world, and same like you, I sort of turned my side hustle into my hustle because I was getting like lots of leads, and then lots of there was a demand, and then I hated working in a corporate environment. So that's why I stepped out. So as for yourself, tell us I think you also mentioned that you had a business for a while previously, and then after that you turned your side hustle into your agency. So how was the process of that?
Yeah, the process was long, and that's part of that fear, right, in the
Yeah.
beginning. Because we have a family, and we have 3 kids, and so it's a single income family for us, right? And so is the ability to get consulting gigs while I was working full time. So imagine having two incomes, right? And that was great. It was comfortable. It was easy. It was like clients were coming to me because of my network. But I've never felt fulfilled, because I was more excited to come home and leave work and work on my projects than to be at work. All right. I don't advise any of your audience to do this who are working in a company today, but I would literally back in the day, and this is like full transparency, right? I would literally back in the day call in sick, right? Just so that I can stay home to work on my side hustle. Because that was how excited. That was what I was willing to give up, right? So that I can do something that I really believed in and I was truly passionate and excited about. But that journey, right? That journey took me 17 years. So when I look at a lot of our network in the LinkedIn family, and they took 3 years, they realized it in 5 years, right? I am super envious and at the same time excited for them, because they have basically done what I dreamt of doing 17 years ago, right? Is to believe in your passion, chase it, and just go for it, right? Without kind of looking back and asking the what if, what could, should have, whatever, like none of that stuff. So my journey was I think it was, I don't look back and regret, right? In terms of I should have done it earlier, or what could have been, or what should have been. Because in my perspective, if I didn't go through all that, right, I would make more mistakes today than if I started 5 years ago. So, the lesson that I really learned from that is the reflective moment is, look, every one of you has your own time, right? Whether you can turn your side hustle into your main hustle in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter, right? What's most important is that you finally do it. Time that is right for you, right? And again, the funny thing is also there's no right time, right? So it's when you feel that you are so dissatisfied, and that was where I was at, right? I was feeling so dissatisfied with where I was at. The only thing was I it up for too long.
But explain more about the dissatisfaction, because your side hustle and your job is pretty much the same. You're working in SEO and digital marketing, but what will make you more passionate about the side hustle? Like
different purpose, right? Different objectives, different goals, and different reasons. So when I am working on the main hustle, right, working for a company, working for corporations and all that, I'm doing it because I have to. All right, I'm doing it because I have to maintain a paycheck. I have to maintain health insurance. I have to maintain a steady stream of income. When I do it on my side hustle, right, I do it because I want to. Right? I do it because I enjoy digging into data, because I'm working on something that I believe in. Right? I do the same thing. You're right. Whether I'm doing it for a client that has paid me $1,000 a month for the last 5 years, and he still does, even money. We want to talk about that, but but I don't care, right? And I think that's the point, the time where you realize that you want to get rid of your main hustle and make your side hustle your main, right? Is when you don't care what that main hustle can. All you're caring about is what my side hustle can make me become.
Amazing. Like it's good to find clients that sort of give you a purpose. Tell us your journey in terms of maybe business development, of growing the agency to what it is now. You started last year in August. So what was your growth strategy for the past year?
Yeah, honestly, none. I don't want to give you fluff. I don't want to give your audience fluff. Um, you know, we are growing faster. First of all, we're growing faster than I thought we could, right? So, yeah, I don't want to give your audience a false expectation about, the growth of Fullmoon Digital or kind of. When I decided to start the agency, no idea of how I was going to grow it, right? I had a list of clients that I said, okay, well, I'm consulting with them. Now I just got to form a business and transfer the business over to the company, right? And that was kind of the start of the business. But and so the expectation of growth that I had, right, was okay. Well, let's see if we can hire a salesperson. Let's see if we can, buy ads, right? The Google thinking, right? Let's buy ads and start to promote the business, drive leads, and all that stuff. But there was really no strategy per se on say, hey, look, we're going to do all this content. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I am not looking back at it and say, oh, I should have done this, or read, the top 10 ways of growing an agency articles, or, any of that stuff. What we're really chasing is the passion behind it, right? It's like, look, like we like I said, we are growing at a pace where I didn't think we could in the first place. But I think part because of what we're doing, like you see me putting things out on LinkedIn every day, doing Facebook stuff, all that. I do it because one, I enjoy it. Two, it's an outlet for me to express myself, right? And then the connections that I built out of that just happens to because of that connectivity with the same passion. So, at some point, my team is going to say, hey, what's your growth strategy, right? And then I'll be like, as the CEO, I'm like, yeah, here's a 10-page PowerPoint, and this is how we're going to do it. But I think at some point we have to grow up as a business. But right now, everyone that we have in our remote culture, we are really focused on, hey, what do we enjoy doing, and let's just do more of it. Right? And we get clients that are referred to us. 95% of our business and our leads are referred.
Wow, referred from like existing clients.
Yeah, from existing clients, from people in the network, from people who I used to work with who are now running marketing for a different company. All right, so we do a lot of that. We actually work with 3 other agencies where we do the work for them.
Nice.
Right, so we'll never see it. Our brand will never be there, right? But we are basically supporting them.
Great. Is there some music at the background or something?
I don't think so.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
No worries. Okay. When I looked at your agency, I find it very interesting because one of the things I found is that you said you are results-based agency, no bullshit. So how do you explain that methodology to your clients? Do you look at the conversions? Or how do you do it?
Yeah. So we do all that, right? I think the reality is when we talk to a client, right? If you're a client, we are not going to throw you fluff, right? I have conversations with so many clients, and every conversation with them is, look, either, I've literally said things to a client like this before, right? I say, look, your brand sucks, right? And I say that because, they know it sucks. They know they have to develop the brand, right? But someone say it. Someone had to be the bad cop, right? And so running a business, working with clients, it's the same thing as living your life, right? First, you have to realize where you're wrong. You have to realize where your strengths are, right? So you focus on it, and then you have to realize, oh, what am I not good at? Let's kind of get rid of that, right? And so that level of transparency is what we incorporate into all our relationships with our clients. If we say that we cannot work with you, it's not because we don't want to work with you. It's because there's no alignment in whether it's a belief, whether it's values, whether it's kind of mindset, right? And if we say we work with you, we'll tell you as it is, right? We have on a phone call with a prospect yesterday, and they just launched a new website. I literally said this to them to say, all right, you right? I literally told them that your website will not convert anyone. You either redo your website before we start working together, or the first project is to work on your website.
Nice.
But this is after they spent $50,000 building a new website.
It's great to be always honest with your clients.
Yeah, I think most people like it. Most people appreciate it. Some brands, don't want to hear that because, in a way, they see it as an insult. All right. So part of our craft, part of you running your own startup, part of me running an agency, part of your audience, getting their own clients, the art in communicating that to your client can make or break a deal, right? And it can help you identify and find a new client. Like, forget about, let's run ads and, segment the audience and target the industry and then run, targeted ads, right? That's great. You will get the lead, right? But at the end of the day, it's a relationship with the other person on the other side of the screen. You cannot tell until you talk to the person.
Great stuff, great stuff. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, since you've been started an agency for almost a year, what are the biggest challenges when coming to running an agency? And just to give a background, your agency is a remote agency. That means you don't really have physical office. All your team members are remote. So what's the biggest challenges of running an agency so far?
Yeah, I think after running it for a year, we've come down to about three of them. Maybe there's four. One is coordination, right? Because we have people in the East Coast, we have people in the West Coast, and there's a huge time difference. And so managing projects is one of those weird things, right? It's like, okay, well, how do we make sure that everyone's at the same time? Well, you run into situations like, okay, well, we want to have a meeting at 4. Well, in the East Coast, it's 7. And they're like, no, I'm having dinner with my family. Okay, right? So what we've kind of figured out is, there's a certain window, right, where you either have to figure out, okay, we have clients on the East Coast, let's dedicate teams to that, or we have clients on the West Coast, let's dedicate teams to that. And there's always that crossover where, you might have a resource that is that you need in the East Coast client, but they're based in the West Coast. So juggling that is interesting. We use a project management tool called Asana to kind of help coordinate those type of situations, make sure that everyone has accountable tasks that they have to be responsible for. All right, so using a project management tool, we use Slack a lot, right? Slack is like our bread and butter, to basically smooth out that communication flow. In the beginning, it was horrible. In the beginning, it was horrible. Like, I ended up basically just saying, you know what? It's going to take me more time trying to figure out the coordination. I'm just going to do the work myself, right? So that's definitely one challenge. If you want, remote teams are great because there's so much flexibility, but it takes a certain type of person. It takes a certain type of character to be able to work remotely and be accountable for their work. All right. I used to work remotely for a company, and let me tell you, it's so easy to take advantage of that situation. Right. I would be at Santa Monica. I'll be out on the beach, and I'm like, yeah, I'm working remotely. Well, technically I am, right? I have my laptop, but I'm not really focused on it. And the second thing I would say is cash flow. All right. This is something that a lot of startups don't like to talk about. I mean, I don't, prefer to talk about it either, but I want to make sure that this is very clear. Unless your startup is funded by a VC, unless you have somehow got a bunch of money from friends, unless you somehow have won the lottery, or you've somehow, got some seed money, cash flow is going to be the biggest pain in the ass for startups, right? Now, if you're a single person, if you're doing it yourself, it's easy. It's slightly manageable, right? You know what's going in, you know what's going out. The minute you start to scale a little bit, the minute a few big clients start to pay late, you're going to run into issues, right? And so it's something that I think it's talked about little in our industry, because I think it's part of the glamour of startups. Like until you've actually made it, right? And you'll see a lot of LinkedIn articles, right? Guys have made it to maybe a $5-10 million business. Then you'll start seeing articles coming out. Oh yeah, 5 years ago I was sleeping in my car, or 5 years ago I was eating, like, sharing ramen with my co-founder and whatnot, right? But they only say it when they get there, right? No one is cataloging their journey. So, cash flow, I think, is something that I feel as startup community, right, needs to be talked about more, because it's an ugly subject, right? Like no one wants to admit that they can't pay their employees on time. I mean, we've done it in a couple times. Like we've literally been a week late, right? Not because we don't have the money to pay them, but because what comes in goes out, right? And what's been allocated for software, for all that stuff, has already been taken care of. So a couple of clients decided that, oh, we're going to pay you late because we can. You're stuck. Right? So, and that is the dirty truth. We work with companies that are mega publishing companies. They're 60 days late. Like, what can we do about it? When they owe us $40,000, $50,000. And then we have a team we have a team here being supported and dependent on that invoice. So that's the second thing, right? And it's ugly, and it's uncomfortable to talk about, but I think it's also something that should be, and third is finding the right people. All right. My first 2 hires were horrible. It was totally my mistake. Right. I had clients. I was doing the work, and I needed help, and I realized that. So I hired people in a rush. I saw their resume, talked to them. Good, you're in. You're good, right? And probably for a week, I had help. But after that week, I realized my clients suffered. Results were basically out of whack. Budgets were out of whack. Everything was just, and I actually spent double time. So, finding the right people is a challenge, especially when you're remote. When you want to kind of grow a support structure within your business. So, that is something that I kind of learned the hard way, because, I paid for it, right? It was my mistake, and I paid for it, and I ended up working overtime on myself just to fix the issues. When in reality, what I should have done, right, is to basically say, you know what, I'm going to suck up because this is not the right person, and I'm going to do the work until I. And if that means not bringing on a new client, so be it, right? Clients are everywhere. Agencies are everywhere, right? There's a lot of business in this world that we can go for. But to do it right, that is, I think, important.
Yep, I think great tip there. I also, as well, I actually face the same challenges that you mentioned. Cash flow is quite important.
Yeah.
And I see, I don't know why, but I've been on LinkedIn and I see always the same tagline, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, that it's the best time to start a business, or the best time to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I see that too.
I don't know why I see it. I seriously don't know why I see it. But I do agree in some way. So my starting of becoming a independent marketer, also coincided with the change in LinkedIn, which is quite interesting. What are your views on that? So like, if you were to start your business maybe 4 years ago or 3 years ago, you wouldn't have like a platform just for business anyway. But so much has changed. And what do you think of the timing right now?
Yeah, I think you're right. The timing right now is that there is so much opportunity to distribute and connect, right? The speed at which you can connect to another person on those platforms is instantaneous, right? But it's like back in the day, right? I say one of the biggest platforms back in the day, 4 years, 5 years ago, was what? Oh, right? You write a blog, keep on writing articles, and hopefully someone reads it, and then they contact you, and then you connect. Or you go to conferences, or you do all this offline stuff. With the changes that LinkedIn has brought to the public, right? For someone to start a business today, you do all your due diligence and all that stuff, but you literally have an audience sitting in the platform, waiting to be reached out to, waiting to be connected with, right? Waiting to be served, to be serviced. The only pet peeve I have, and I'm not sure if you go through this, but when and there's so many people talking about this, but I think it's a good reminder, is for anyone out there, who's reaching out to someone to connect, like, for Pete's sake, do not pitch them the next minute on right? Like, don't do that. Build meaningful relationships. That's what LinkedIn is about, right? LinkedIn is not a marketplace for you to sell first. Selling comes last. It's a marketplace for you to connect, establish relationships, give value, and distribute your content. If people can see that, right, then you're not going to want to sell more often. The clients will come to you. The business will come to you. All right. But the way LinkedIn has opened up that opportunity, right, it's good and bad, right? It serves both purposes. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, in my profile, right, I actually say I'm not looking for a job. Okay. And you turn off all those notifications and all that stuff. Once every few months, I would get emails. Email, was it? Yeah, the email, LinkedIn email.
Yeah.
From companies, right? I got one yesterday from a company called Hired.com, right? And it has to be automated, right? We saw your profile. We feel like you're a great fit for a position that we have. Please join the Hired network and submit your resume. Like, I don't even know that person. Right? So it has opened up opportunities for recruiters. It's opened up opportunities for companies. But more importantly, it has opened up opportunities for entrepreneurs and people interested in starting their own business to carefully nurture that environment. All right. And I get it. Entrepreneurs, they want to hit the ground running. It's so exciting to get your first client. It's so exciting to get connected and start to interact with people. And you're passionate about what you do and you want to share that. You want to pitch. You want to do all that. But I would say focus on how you can be part of a community before offering your services. It's like that video that you had about how to say no in Japan, right? It's like that was an interesting video, by the way, but it reminds me, right? In order to work in a culture or work in an environment, industry, before doing that, know the industry, know the culture, know the people.
Great stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of people still figuring out the social selling part, because LinkedIn is fairly new as a platform. Since they got bought over by Microsoft last year, but it's fairly new. In terms of business, do you have mentors? You mentioned Kurt Mercadante, but do you have mentors that you look up to to guide you to different stages of your business?
I do. So Kurt, so my coach, I think, highly of him. And it's funny because, I haven't known the guy for a long time, right? But, I look at that from a content and kind of value perspective. Right? He shares a lot of content. He shares a lot of his, experiences in kind of his approach and how he views the world and views businesses and all that stuff. And, I've talked to him a couple of calls, and, reality is, we, as an individual, as a business owner, as an agency owner, I'm so close and into the weeds that I can't see things from far sometimes, right? So you need that perspective of, a lot of times my conversation with him is helping me realize that, oh my gosh, I'm so in the weeds, I need to step back, right? Or I'm so focused on one thing when reality is the exact one thing I shouldn't be focused on. So, I think that kind of feedback is important. The other kind of way I get mentored is really just by watching a lot of videos from, people when he speaks, Les Brown, right? His motivational speaking, Gary Vee, his speeches that he gives that are very encouraging and motivating. But I always pick and choose selectively in terms of what is relevant to me, right? In a video from Gary Vee, for example, in a 40-minute speech that he gives in a conference, maybe only 10 minutes applies to me, right? Because I'm not a millennial, right? His speech is very geared towards millennials, all right? The 24s, the 35s, and whatnot, and it's very motivating for them. But I don't get anything out of those. What I do get out of is the mindset, right? The mindset, pushing for what you believe in, pushing for your positivity, and that kind of stuff. And so, what I look for is those kind of points and validations and guidance from that. And so, and the third one of how I feel I get mentored is honestly by reading all this amazing content and amazing articles that all you guys write, like LinkedIn, people from the family that push all this stuff out, right? Because a lot of that comes from their experiences, and I can't live their experience, right? I can't live your experience, but I can get mentored by what you share. So those are kind of the three ways where I feel like, I see mentorship differently. I don't see it as it has to be a physical person. I see it as kind of the things that I allow and kind of. So I look at the videos from Gary Vee, a lot of motivational speeches from Les Brown, and so I pick and choose, right, selectively what can apply to me, because a lot of these guys, when they talk, like Gary Vee, for example, right, he speaks to millennials, and I don't need to learn that I need to fail. I know that I need to fail, right? Mm-hmm. But when he talks about how you can remain positive, how you can, the importance of being positive and having gratitude for things, sometimes we look at that and we're like, yeah, you know what? I should be grateful for certain things in my life, and I should be grateful for the people that decide to spend hours working with me. I should be grateful for clients that trust me with their work, right? So, those are things that I think are, that I look forward to mentor myself. And of course, the content that I see every day on LinkedIn, right? The experiences that I can live through someone else, that they are willing to share with, whether it's through their hardships, through their personal growth, through their challenges, working with, as an entrepreneur. So yeah, I see mentorship as just a different areas of how my life can be impacted.
Yeah. Before we go, I think the last question, I see you as a great example, because we came from the same country, which is Malaysia, and you're a Malaysian making it in LA. Having like tons of experience. This is because most of my audience are from Asia. what's your experience being an Asian and climbing up the career ladder, like starting your own business? Like, what's this perspective as an Asian being in it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually never thought about that because look, I think anyone can make it anywhere, right? It's that fear, that sense of uncomfortability, that sense of self-inflicted insecurity, right? Everything that you think your audience think they can't do is because they think they can't do, right? They're going to have people tell them they shouldn't and they can't and give them advice left and right. At the end of the day, though, like what's stopping any of your audience in Asia, in Malaysia, in KL, wherever, right? Having clients in the US, what's stopping them, right? I mean, we have the internet. Yeah, it's international, right?
Yeah.
Like I have clients in certain states that I've never met in my life. When I was in Michigan, right, I had a client in London that I never met in my life. One thing to kind of leave your audience away with, right, is that understand that no one can tell you no, okay, and that no one can go. And no one can decide for you, right? No one can decide for you what you should or you shouldn't do, right? I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's all excuses. If your audience says, "Oh, you know what? I'm here. I'm in Malaysia. I'm in KL. I can't talk to a client in the US, or I'm not good enough, or there's so many people out there doing it." Okay, then stop complaining, right? So either we have a saying here, right? Either you shit or you get off the pot, right? So, you either do it or you stop complaining.
Great stuff, great stuff. I'll take that to heart. So that's advice for me as well, starting out. So thanks so much, Derek, for your time. You've talked for a long, long time. Thanks for taking this time to talk to me, and we'll connect more on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Bob.
Right.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Derek.